Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Podcraft. This is the show all about podcasting, from planning to growth to monetization, everything in between. Just to say as well, if you're ready to start or scale your own podcast, you don't have to do it alone. Of course, you can work with us one-to-one. We do mentoring, coaching, all sorts of services to help you with your pod. If you want to get in touch at thepodcasthost.com/help, and we can figure out a personalized podcast coaching or service for you today. But even if you're just listening along, you don't need services, you just want the help. That's what Podcraft is here for. So Matthew, what are we going to dig into this week?
Our most frequently asked question, isn't it? How do I grow my audience? I always sort of used to have a wee chuckle to myself when maybe I'd speak to somebody, trying to get them help or get them on the road with something, get them some advice. And that was a question, I just want to know how to grow my audience. And it's like, well, strap in, because there's lots to talk about here.
It's a whole, it's a whole book, basically.
Yeah, quite literally.
So we've got your new framework we're going to go through, aren't we? The SCALE framework, SCALE. So where do we start with this then?
Yeah, so we've been really into frameworks and acronyms recently, haven't we? But I've been enjoying kind of organising our content into these frameworks, because I think before, we've created a lot of content on growth. And obviously, like our courses or books and stuff, we have chapters and we've categorised things. But I feel sometimes it's almost like the metaphorical dumping the box of Lego on the table and saying, right, let's start sifting through this. And, it could be overwhelming because there's so many different growth tactics and tips and everything like that. So just attempting to try and say, let's put this into something memorable and let's work through them in a more logical manner. So SCALE this time is the framework that we're going with. So what have I got for the old SCALE framework, Colin?
We've got 5 things. I think, it's, you say we've been getting right into the frameworks, but I think that's exactly it. What you just said, like it's organizing, like we've ended up with so much content. It's actually, like you say, just really useful to start putting it into different frameworks. And we tried one and that worked really nicely. So really enjoying this and finding it really useful. So SCALE is split up into S for syndication, C for communities and collaboration. We've got A for advertising and paid promotion. We've got L for live and in person. And we've got E for email and engagement. And that nicely splits up basically the big elements of growth, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't include everything and anything that you could possibly do, but it contains most of the big elements that you can get started with, and even down like years down the line as well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm, totally, yeah. I mean, like we're saying, there's so many things that you could do to grow an audience, and not all of the tactics that we mention or that you'll hear out there are a good fit for everyone. Like, I don't think there's anyone who's done all of them, or even that it would make sense to do some of them. So, and I mean, with a topic this vast, like literally every tactic and strategy is almost an episode in its own right. So I think we're just going to see how we go with this, aren't we? We're going to start to work through the SCALE framework, but we'll be conscious of time, and I think we'll have to end up breaking this episode up a wee bit. But it'll be a nice wee experiment, I suppose, won't it?
Yeah, for sure. 2 or 3 episodes at least, I think. But I reckon we'll try and get through at least the first 2. Try and get through S and C this episode, syndication and communities and collaboration. Give you all of the elements of both of those, the things that you can try to grow your show, and give you places to look as well. So if you're out there thinking you want to put this into action, we'll give you some actions somehow to hear in the episode, but plenty more that you can go and follow up with as well. Should we dig into syndication then, Matthew? What does syndication even mean? It's quite a fancy word, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Average Scottish people.
It's certainly out with my own vocabulary, but syndication, basically getting your podcast out there, making sure it's first of all accessible, like people could find it, they could listen to it, they could watch it or whatever, the distribution and all the kind of bells, whistles and best practices that come with that, from your domain name to your titles, your SEO and all that sort of stuff. So I guess that's all within that kind of syndication, I can't even say it, syndication section of the framework.
Yeah. How to make it easy to find, essentially, isn't it? So yeah, like you say, directories to SEO to everything like that. So yeah, let's dig into it. So syndication, like this always starts with the basics, which is the directories, doesn't it? Almost the first step of anyone putting their podcast out there in the world is once it's all complete, let's get it in. Well, I suppose you have to publish it to your hosting, don't you? But directories are totally involved in that too. So what directories do you make people actually submit to these days? What are the big ones?
Yeah, I mean, Apple's always been the big one, hasn't it? And the fact that when you're in Apple Podcasts, formerly iTunes, it just gets you in, umpteen other directories, some that you've never even heard of, all these different apps. They use the Apple API basically to pull your episodes into there. And at Apple, it was always a tricky beast, wasn't it? Like submitting there was a bit clunky until very recently, actually, where it just became much easier and you could do it in most hosting providers, including our own Alitu. It's just basically a button in your hosting provider, so you could submit it there. So that's the complete no-brainer, isn't it? Get it in Apple.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And then Spotify, their big one really at the moment as well. It was kind of, well, I'm still in almost the habit of calling Spotify like the up-and-comer, the new one.
Yeah,
but it's been,
even though it's coming on 10 years now since I've been.
Yeah, I mean, it's been matching at Apple essentially for distribution numbers for quite a few years now, hasn't it? So yeah, get it into Spotify as well. You could submit quite easily to Spotify. Just go and create an account there and you can add it in. And then, of course, we have the newer kid on the block, not really new, but newer to podcasting is YouTube. YouTube already complaining, well, we're complaining, claiming that they are like the biggest podcasts distributor out there, essentially, like quite a few numbers saying that more podcasts are watched and listened to on YouTube. Skeptical about that, exactly how that works. But yeah, it's still a very big one to get yourself onto, to get some more views, more listens as well. Even if you're audio, is that right, Matthew? Would you get you on there, even if you're just audio only?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I host my tabletop show on Red Circle. They've got a really good publish to YouTube feature. So I literally just tick a box and I could sort of edit the title as I want it to appear there if I wanted to do that. But it just creates an audiogram episode. And, I get 30 odd, 40 odd people listening / watching on YouTube, which, doesn't sound big, but if you the classic imagine a room full of people example, and that's why not push it out to them? It's literally one click, so it makes total sense. Even if you're an audio show, which most people are, just push it out there and forget about it basically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, even if you don't have easy publishing from your hosting, like you just set up on YouTube. YouTube can, if you've got a YouTube account, you basically add a podcast there, you add your RSS feed, and it'll pull them in automatically, and just add your artwork. So even if you're audio only, it adds it in really simply. Like you say, we did that with Podcraft for a little while, and yeah, we're getting like 10, 20, 30 listens. Watches, whatever you want to call it, on there, which obviously is a small fraction of the number of listens we get in our standard RSS feed, but it's still 20, 30, 40 more people that might turn into long-term subscribers, so well worth it. Right, what else in syndication then? I mean, there's always loads more directories you can talk about. You've got I used to talk about TuneIn Radio and stuff like that, because that gets you on Alexa. You've got Amazon Music, you've got a bunch of other ones, but generally, if you've covered Apple Pods, Spotify, and YouTube, you're covering 90+% of the listening public, aren't there? But
yeah, I'd say 99.9 to be honest.
Yeah, you're more likely. Yeah, totally. The one caveat to that is sometimes if you've got a podcast in a particular niche, there might be something that's particularly suited to your niche. So hopefully you would know this. If you're in the niche, if you're creating a podcast for a particular topic, you'd know if there's some kind of directory just for that topic. But do a bit of research with your customers, find out where they're listening to podcasts right now with your audience, try and find more people in your space, and make sure you're not missing some quite a big little niche distributor, niche publisher that you should be getting your podcast into. Worth a check. All right, what else we got, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, websites, this has been pretty topical for us recently. Katie created some content around our podcast website's still important. Myself and Jacob had a conversation recently about content websites and, what are their future? As it stands right now, I think having a podcast website, again, it's a no-brainer. Have a home for your show. I know we've got lots of different places to have our content online, but get your own website, especially with tools like, I'm always going on about them, but Podpage, just such a simple, accessible way to make a website, almost instantly for your podcast. So get yourself a website. And then there's definitely a few things on that website that we kind of want to put in place or optimize. And again, Podpage, it makes it really easy. So what are some of those website features that podcasters will definitely want to utilize?
Yeah, a bunch of stuff, isn't there? I mean, the basics are get yourself an about page. So been around since the dawn of internet time to have some kind of an about page. You'll have a description in your artwork on the front page, hopefully. You mentioned Podpage, Matthew. Nearly all hosting platforms will have one of these too. So you'll be able to set up your description, your artwork, so that shows up nicely at the top. So it's really obvious what your podcast is, what it's about, who it's for, right at the top. But that about page for people to dig into a bit more detail, who you are, why you started the show, stuff like that really matters for podcasts, doesn't it? Like, it's even more important for podcasting than just about any other content, because it's such a personal medium. It's such a about you as a host medium, isn't it, Matthew? So like, that about page makes a big difference.
Yeah, I heard. I mean, this is old information now. I think this was like 10 years ago or so, but I remember somebody saying like the about page on a website is almost always the most viewed page on that site. And again, this is going back to 2015, so I don't know if that's still true. But what I could guess is that it's still going to be up there as one of the most popular pages on a site. So you want to optimize that. Don't just, we've talked in the past about podcast descriptions, which ties into this. They're a bit of an afterthought. You're about to publish and you realise you've got this blank box and you just bang something in. No, this is actually worth, even if you do that, come back to it and do a bit of work on it and optimize it. And write this for the reader. Tell them what you're about, tell them what they want, basically. So make it about them. That's a great addition to any content website, not just podcast website.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. At least, I mean, it should be about your experience, shouldn't it? But you're putting that in the light of how that benefits them. Because again, we're all selfish. We talk about that fairly often, like listeners. They want to know what's in it for them. So yeah, tell your story, but relate how that benefits them long term. Like what you can teach them, what you can help them with, what shortcuts you can help them find, what mistakes you can help them avoid, all of those things. What about a subscribe page, Matthew? You would hopefully have subscribe links on that front page, so that people hit our URL is podcraft.net for Podcraft. So for this show, we have podcraft.net. People hit that page, they see the artwork, the description, like we said. They also see some subscribe links there directly, don't they? But would you have a separate subscribe page with all the different options?
Yeah, I mean, if this is a feature you can get on your homepage just nice and clear, you've got all those different wee app buttons. That's a really good feature. But yeah, a dedicated subscribe, or, follows the more modern word, I think, that people are kind of used to hear. And they subscribe always had that connotation of I'm paying for something, whereas a lot of apps now, it's about following. And I think people do, most people know that following something is generally free. So you might want to have a follow the podcast page or something like that. But yeah, all these different apps. And again, depending on your target audience, you might have to do a bit of information, a bit of education, here around, how do I get this thing? Like maybe they're coming to this, they're not very techie. So you could do a bit of explaining, a couple of videos. I'll actually put links in the show notes. I just did videos recently on how to follow a podcast on Spotify, show you how to do that, and to follow a podcast on Apple. So these are videos, 30-second videos that you could embed them on your site, and it will show potential listeners how to get your podcast really quickly and easily. So I think that's definitely worth having on your site as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's a nice way to, just give them a wee bit of a guidance, make sure they know how to do it. That's the thing, isn't it? Like, we want to try and attract more non-podcast listeners. Like, this is about being able to send people to our website. That's one of the biggest benefits about having a website for your show, is the fact that you don't have to send people to just say, subscribe to my podcast. People who already listen will subscribe. They'll find their preferred listening app, whether it's Apple Pods, Spotify, Pocket Cast, whatever it is. They can find that, no worries. But with those people, you're competing for listening time with all the other shows they already listen to. And fine, you should be doing that for sure. But one of the bigger opportunities actually is finding these people who are not necessarily already big podcast listeners and getting them indoctrinated, send them to the website where it has directly a guide, like here's how to subscribe, here's how it works, here's the few different apps that you can subscribe in, hopefully one's on your phone already. Like that's one of the biggest opportunities really. And that even comes into what we'll talk about even a little bit later here, which is the SEO side, the fact that, that's you telling people, out in the world, like subscribe to my show, go to this URL, but SEO wise as well, like hopefully you're going to help people find your website directly, find the articles, the written stuff there, find the podcast description, and then subscribe. And again, they might not be listeners already. They might not really know how it all works. So yeah, that's a really valuable thing to put in. What about the other thing you always used to have on a website, Matthew, is a contact page? What do you put on that these days for a podcast?
Yeah, so you definitely want to have an avenue for listeners to get in touch with you, aren't you? This is all part of growing your show because, again, this is probably existing listeners that are getting in touch, but you're building those relationships, you're kind of bringing them more into your community and they're going to, in turn, kind of grow your show for you because they're going to talk about your podcast elsewhere, they're going to become big fans of it. So you want that avenue for them to be able to get in touch. So a contact page, again, it's pretty self-explanatory, but, if you're on social media, you could add your different handles or links on there, and then you could either have an email list or a contact form. Just make it easy for people to get in touch because podcasting, there's always been a bit more friction, between the audience and actually getting in touch with the host. So you do want to, don't make them work for it. Make sure that, if they want to reach out to you, that it's very obvious and easy to do so.
Yeah, for sure. One thing we've got in here, which I like as well, is Media Kit page. So having a Media Kit page in here is a really valuable thing, isn't it? Because it's where, somebody who wants to help you grow your show can find out more about your show. That's where you put a lot of stuff around the demographics, like who the show's for, how you can work together, things like that. Even sponsors and stuff like that might look up this page too, Matthew, and working with other companies. Collaborations, actually, talking about growth specifically, that's more the monetization side of things, thinking about sponsorship. But when we're thinking about growth in our scale framework here, it's collaborations. It's talking to other brands and talking to them about how you can work together to grow each other's audience. And a lot of that requires something like a Media Kit, which really details the type of people you talk to, the type of content you create, outlines really what the show's all about from a more technical format point of view. So that's worthwhile putting on there as well, isn't it, Matthew?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I always think, imagine, a journalist in your niche or a YouTuber or, some sort of content creator. They really like your show and they just want to create content around it. They want to feature it in some way. And you've got a Media Kit there. You're making it so easy for them. You're giving them assets, you're putting your best stuff out there for them. So, it's again, these things are just so, they're so obvious, but I think a lot of us, myself included, sometimes just don't do them. And then we complain about our growth when we've missed these low-hanging opportunities.
Yeah, totally. Talking of which, the social sharing buttons as well, that's one of those, isn't it? Make sure your website does have those on them. I mean, it kind of goes without saying these days, but have a Facebook share, an X share, a LinkedIn share, all that kind of stuff. So it's just really simple for people to find an episode, click a button, and it automatically populates a post for them on whatever social media platform that they use commonly.
Mm-hmm.
What about domains? We mentioned that already, the fact that we use podcraft.net, this website. We want people to go there really simply. How do you think about domains for a podcast? Do you need a totally separate one for your show?
I still like the idea. I still think being able to read out a domain, a .com essentially is a .com is preferable always in my opinion, but maybe that's old school thinking. You get lots of different, we've got .net ourselves. There's lots of different ones you could get now. So I've always liked that idea, even if you're just pointing it to the basic website that you get on your hosting provider, get a nice domain for that. There's a few sort of best practices around domains too, especially in podcasting. If you're reading it out, you want it to be readable, I suppose. You want to avoid hyphens and stuff like that, don't you? Ambiguity, a number, are you writing the number or are you spelling it out and that? So I think it makes sense to get a domain.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember the one I always remember from that was Tim Ferriss, one of the biggest podcasters around. His was always called the 4 Hour Work Week, I think, in the olden days, and he always had to spell it out. It was always four with that. That's the word. In fact, I can't even remember. He described it in a really weird way, so I don't think it even made sense.
Yeah,
like the word for or something like that. Or, but yeah, you want it to make sure that anytime you say it to someone, there's absolutely no doubt. Like, what do I type in? What do I actually type into my browser here? Even words like we sometimes have trouble with our talking to Alitu. So Alitu is our podcast editor platform. Like, we've talked over the years about changing that name sometimes, because sometimes people say, how do you spell that? Like, is that an ALETU or is it ALITU? So yeah, we've not followed the best practices ourselves on that one. But yeah, if you can find something, I totally agree. Like, I think it's well worth it for the 10, 15, 20 quid a year that it costs to get one of these, even if, like you say, you're using a pod page or a hosting provider page, whatever it is, most of them will allow you to apply a custom domain to it so that you can just read this out really simply on your episode. So you're not saying, go over to podcraft.alitu.com. You're saying just podcraft.net instead. So yeah, well worth it, I think. Right, what else we got? What else would you include?
Yeah, I mean, this should be outdated advice, but ensuring you're sort of mobile friendly with your website, and you would assume that most websites are now just designed to either, if you're opening up on a phone, it'll just all rework itself to fit properly. But sometimes you find that sites don't work so well on a phone. So again, if you're using something like Podpage, that'll all happen automatically. But if you're maybe cobbling something together yourself on WordPress or that, it's worth always just, everything you create on there, just have a quick look on your phone as well. Even it might just be, some text needs tweaking or something needs moved or that an image needs resized. But you would think all this stuff would happen automatically these days, but it doesn't always.
Not always. It's amazing how many times you can accidentally screw it up as well. Like, even on our website, our website's really designed to be mobile first almost. But still, I look at an article sometimes after editing it and realize that I've put an image on that was too big or something like that, which makes it too wide. So anytime you publish anything, yeah, for sure, get on there, have a look and check it. Moving on to the next one, one of the other things I really like, talking of things that can be too wide, is a trailer. I remember messing up a few pages with these, sometimes like embedding a video. So I like putting on a trailer. Like, we've had this with Hostile Worlds. I think we had this where we had created a little trailer with an animation that went with it and put that on the front page. And I think that can be a really nice welcome to it as well, like especially if you actually have the budget or the capability to put some visuals together for it as well, so that you've got a 30-second, 60-second little visual trailer. But an audio one is totally fine as well, like just having a wee audio 30-second, 60-second something, which actually really brings somebody into a show, doesn't it, Matthew? You think that's good practice to put that on the homepage?
Yeah, I mean, this is the complete no-brainer. I've used that term a lot in this episode already, but yeah, you absolutely have to have a sample of your audio or your media on your homepage. You want to pull them in straight away. You could write as much about the show as you want, about what they'll get, about the audience, but just let them hear it. 30 seconds, just pull them in. We've done full episodes on creating trailers, and you absolutely have to do this if you're podcasting, if you're serious about growing your audience.
Yeah, there's a few different ways you can do this. Again, we'll put a link in the show notes here to an article we've got on creating great trailers, a few videos on it as well, all sorts of stuff. So have a look at the show notes for full guides on how to do this. But I mean, it can be anything from just a 60-second advert where you're talking over a bit of music about what the show's about, to like 2 or 3 minutes where it's actually a sample of a highlight from a show, like a really good segment, for example, that just jumps straight into the content. The alternative, Matthew, that you see, isn't it, is that people will just have like the latest episode at the top. And not necessarily anything bad with that. It's just the fact that podcasting, as by its nature, it takes like 3, 4, 5 minutes to really get into the meat of the content often, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, maybe that's a hint. We should be getting to the meat of our content as quick as we can in our episodes. But with the best of wills, you still have an intro. You still have a wee bit of kind of stuff at the start. People like a bit of personal stuff sometimes. But a trailer cuts all of that out and gets straight to the meat of what is this show about? What's it going to give to you as a listener? And having that front and center on that page is top notch. Yeah, cool. All right, what's we got?
So SEO, like, again, this is something we've talked about recently quite a lot, and search traffic, it's not what it was, but the fact is it's still a huge thing. Even though we could look back a few years ago and compare it to the numbers then, SEO is still big. Website traffic is still a big thing. It's still probably the best way to get people who have never heard of your show to find out about it. So you want to optimize your website for SEO, meaning, well-titled content, good written content on there, a mix of, any different media. So yeah, just making sure that, folks that are searching things like Google and other search engines, and even, your AI platforms are doing search now. Make sure that your website has a good chance of being found when folks are searching for topics that you cover, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Like, just we'll link to some big articles we've done on this. Like, we've got a lot of content on how to SEO your podcast content, but the basic rules are that episode titles matter so much, like making sure that they are questions, that they're problems, that they really, tackle, they reflect what people are searching for in the search results. And actually, that really helps you in everywhere. It helps you in the podcast directories as well, because it pings this idea in people's heads when they see it. Oh yeah, I was thinking that, I was asking that, I was typing that into Google yesterday. So that's one of the biggest parts of it. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're also putting a bit of text on every page as well, like writing decent show notes, decent length show notes. Like, so easy these days as well. Like, taking your transcript and turning that into a decent little blog post using AI is, the basic minimum now, really. You want to get in there and do a bit of editing, make sure there's some of your own stuff in there. It's a bit personal. It's not just AI stuff, but even that makes a big difference too, I think. So yeah, a few things in there for the SEO, but really, really important.
One thing that I think could work well for getting traffic onto your website is a page where you document all the tools or resources. Again, this depends on your topic, but do you remember the page we had years ago, Colin? I think we stopped updating it, but it used to do really well for us, didn't it? Like, we had just a big page of resources, basically.
Yeah, we re-updated it recently, actually. So it's actually quite good now. Was it not you that did that, Matthew? I think both of us did a bit of work on it, but do you mean the /resources page?
Was it not called like a gazillion and growing resources or something like that?
I know what you mean. Yeah. So we had two actually. Yeah, totally. That was one that came out of our email. So actually, everything I recommended in our podcast pointers newsletter. So we recommend software, gear, tools, all sorts of stuff. And I had a big list of everything that was mentioned in that newsletter that just kept getting longer and longer and longer. And yeah, absolutely. That was a really good SEO resource. Like, it's actually a really good point. That's something that could be repurposed by just about anyone out there, because if you mention stuff on your website, on your podcast, just keep adding these little tips to this one page every time you mention it on an episode, and it starts getting bigger and bigger. It becomes such a big resource. But we've also got a resources page, which is more organized. It's more like, when we do mention a new tool, we'll add it in there. That's over at resources. So just thepodcasthost.com/resources. And that does really well for us as well, because it does break down like part 1, podcast equipment, and part 2, podcast and web hosting, software and apps, music and artwork, promoting and growing your show, monetization. So it's got all of the different elements of everything we talk about. And yeah, that's a big SEO play for us, really. And it does definitely come out of the podcast often. Like, if we find somebody new, something new, and mention something new, we'll add it into that page. So yeah, good example.
I had to go to that page because I'd forgot about it. And you're right, past me did a nice job on this. I can't remember.
Well done, past
but then I can't even remember like where I put my keys or that. So that's no big surprise.
Well, to in your defense, we now have like 1,000+ articles on there. So yeah, it's hard to remember everyone.
I suppose rounding up this syndication section, then you mentioned transcripts, Colin. Like, there was always a bit of debate around, do I just copy the transcript into the show notes, or do I like make these, do I package them up separately? Yeah. Like, what's your kind of take on that?
I think it's tricky. I think you should definitely be including transcripts in your episodes. So you can include them in your RSS feed these days with any good podcast hosting provider. You should be able to include them on the RSS feed directly, so that anyone that does have accessibility issues can access that transcript really easily in their podcast player. So that's one way. I wouldn't put them on the page. I would link to them potentially, but I think that a good show notes page should, like we said earlier, have a great title and then have a decently written blog post, basically version of that episode, so that it's a nice, concise, useful, readable page that covers all the same topics. And sadly, transcripts generally aren't that, because we don't speak the way we talk. Like, how often have you actually read a whole transcript end to end, Matthew? Like, it's just not that fun, is it?
No. I mean, the old kind of thinking, wasn't it? It was like, get your transcript in your show notes, and search engines will look at that but they don't really. I don't think Google, etc. Yeah, I don't think they recognised it as great written content. So
no. It's terrible content. It's like you keep repeating it as half sentences. You keep repeating words. It's funny because it sounds fine when you hear somebody speaking that way, but then when you read it, it's just terrible. So yeah, definitely include them because they're a great accessibility resource. Maybe link to them from a page, like a PDF transcript or something like that, or an HTML page one. But also have a show notes page essentially, which is a nicely written blog post version of it. And again, you can write this yourself, or you can just chuck it into AI. Train it up a bit on your voice using Claude Project or whatever, and then you can get a nice blog post written from the transcript, which you can then do a bit of editing on to make sure it's all good and in your voice.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's the end of the syndication then, Matthew. We're at half an hour now, over half an hour. What do you want to do? Do you want to get into the next one, or should we cut it there? Maybe this is going to be like a letter per episode.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like to rush communities and collaboration because there's so. I think a lot of this is the gold. So I would like to do it justice. I think we're maybe going to have to cut that there. Yeah. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah, perfect. Sounds good to me. So yeah, I hope you out there. I hope this was useful for you out there listening. I really do like this framework you put together, Matthew. I think it's a really useful way to think about growth. So again, we'll put in the show notes. Have you got an article out on this one yet, Matthew? You have, haven't you?
Yes, it's basically I just polished up our old promotion guide that had all the tactics, but they weren't very well organised. So now I've reworked it all within this scale framework. So I'll put a link to that too. I'm being very organised today. I've got a notepad and
you're noting down
anytime we mention show notes, I'm taking a wee note. Which I should have started doing about 15 years ago, to be honest, but better late than never.
Yeah, so do nip over to the show notes. You'll see them in your podcast player, obviously, or you'll find them over at Podcraft. Again, podcraft.net. We'll have a link to, do you know what, Matthew? This is something we need to improve, like talking about the way like podcast websites and stuff like that. We actually don't have a good place to put our podcast show notes these days, but with the good URL, because we've got podcraft.net, but that links through to our main website, which actually has a big kind of collation of best of, essentially, for the episodes, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, that's like when we created corresponding blog posts for episodes or that, you'll see it in there, but that is actually something I think we've talked about recently that needs attention is the podcraft.net. Like, we'll see what we could do with that to make it much more basically in line with what we've been saying here. Like, we don't actually follow that much of it ourselves. So
we got your own dog food here. Do you know what we used to, though? We actually used to create show notes for every single episode, and then we talked about cutting that down because we were basically, our problem was we were writing blog posts, sort of behind the scenes here, but our problem was we were writing blog posts for every topic, which were like really nicely written blog posts on any given topic, but then we're doing a Podcraft episode on the same topic and then creating our show notes based on that. So we'd end up with duplicate content, didn't we? So that's kind of why we stopped doing it. But I think these days we probably need a separate place for the Podcraft stuff on its own, which does actually have a bit of duplicate potentially. But yeah, we need to figure that out. But
because again, getting into the boring behind the curtain weeds here, but like we'll have our main blog post on like creating a podcast trailer, and that's got the Podcraft episode in it. But because it doesn't have the Podcraft category in WordPress, again, super exciting, it doesn't appear on podcraft.net. So there's that weird disconnect. Again,
but we can figure that out.
Our website's old and it's got lots of foibles, but we try and fix things where and when we can, don't we, and optimize them. So
Yeah, the alternative is the episodes are hosted on Alitu, obviously. So we've got podcraft.alitu.com, which is it does have all the show. That's where the actual show notes are published, isn't it? But then obviously we're not directing people there through the podcast URL.
We could maybe redirect it, just thinking aloud. We could,
yeah, potentially. Aye, absolutely. That would be one solution for sure, because then we'd have one place where we have just the show notes. It's a separate space. But yeah, let's have a think about that problem. You're right. We've got this on our list of to-dos for the next couple of months. We've had it on there for a wee while. So perfect. All right. Anyway, hope that's been useful to you out there. Again, do nip over to the show notes to see all of that. If you do want that help I mentioned at the start, if you do want some coaching, talking about growth today, if there's a campaign you want to run about growth, or you just want to grow your audience, we can offer mentoring coaching to help you do that growth over months, or we can put together growth packages as well, which we've done in the past to help shows grow in a set period of time. Growth is a long-term thing, really. So it is good fun working with people over, 6 months or even a year to help them really grow their content, grow their show over that period of time. It's good fun working with people and, from a coaching or a mentoring standpoint. So yeah, do get in touch if you're interested. We're over at thepodcasthost.com/help. That's thepodcasthost.com/help. And we'll hopefully talk to you then. All right, Matthew, that'll do it for this week.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Good to be back. How was Japan? I know that's a massive topic, but how did it go?
Yeah, it was great. It was really nice. Really good 4 weeks away. That's the longest I've been away for work for a long time. I did kind of keep up with a few things, but mostly just switched off. So it was lovely, actually. So it's kind of funny coming in today, first day back, and try to figure out what the hell my job is these days. Try to remember what I do.
And how's your Japanese?
The Japanese, oh yeah, excellent. Yeah, arigato gozaimasu is about the only thing I know, which is thanks very much. That's about all. Sushi, I know the word sushi. Sushi kudasai. Sushi o kudasai is give me some sushi, please.
Yeah, I've got some Greek. In me now. I was in Crete for a couple of weeks. Weather was terrible. I can't believe it. You go to Crete and the weather was literally worse than Scotland. Back here,
really?
A heat wave, and out there. No, I'd say about 5-6 days out the 11. So, you always. On a hot holiday, you get that one day, don't you? But this was just never ending, and but I did make the most of it. What we got? Dio Bires Paracalo, 2 beers, please. We have Efcaristo, thank you. And Ferratolo Paracalo Gariasmo is, can I have the bill, please? So that's my
nice work.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got.
That's more than I learned. There was a few words that were nice and simple, like asking for a beer was just biru o kudasai.
Good.
And
that's the essentials.
Asking for a coffee was kohi o kudasai. So yeah, that was good. Yeah, nice and simple.
Look at us, all cultured.
Cool. All right. Thank you out there for listening. Hope you got something from this. We'll see you next week for the next edition of the Scale Framework. So then we're going to get into communities and collaboration. Please do follow along the next few weeks. We're going to have communities and collaboration is the C. We've got advertising and paid promotion, which is the A. L is live and in-person ways to grow your show. And then the final one is email and engagement, which actually one of the big ones. I think community and collaboration, one of the big winners for most podcasters, but the other one is email and engagement. How do you actually engage that audience? So stick around for the next few episodes, and please do check the show notes for everything we've mentioned today. All right, thank you, and we'll talk to you next time.